All right, so in today's video, we're going to be looking at how we can migrate from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online, and we're going to be looking at some of the advantages of using QBO and maybe some of the disadvantages and why you might want to stick to your desktop. So the primary, or one of the biggest ones, the advantage of having QBO is that you can access your company file from any place, literally any place in the world, any continent, any country. As long as you have a internet connection, you're good to go. So this is really fantastic for types of entrepreneurs that are needing to meet with clients and invoice them right away, like on the go. Like for instance, an electrician who's providing electrical work, he wants to meet a client, bill him right away. He can do so from the convenience of his own phone, and that's fantastic. It also, QuickBooks Online works really well with bank feeds and credit card transactions. It can actually import all of the information from your bank into QuickBooks Online, and then it's just a matter of you or having your accountant code that information. So that saves a lot of time. And speaking of your accountant, you can use QuickBooks Online really well to collaborate with your accountant without having all of these IT nightmares and headaches and issues with servers and whatnot. Because again, like I was saying previously, your accountant, just like you, can access that company file from any place, from his office. You just need to grant him access. And then finally, there are some limitations to QuickBooks Online, but there are a lot of applications out there, and we're seeing more and more of these that integrate very well with QuickBooks Online and enables them to make QuickBooks do things like importing timesheet information from T-sheets and receipt banks. And I'm not going to go too much into detail about this stuff because I'll save it for a future video, but lots of apps that work fantastic with QuickBooks. All right, so is it easy to migrate to QuickBooks Desktop? And the answer is yes and no. Yes, because the steps that you need to follow are actually quite easy to follow. But in many cases, especially with files that are quite big and large, it doesn't work so well. It's not always a slam dunk because for whatever reason, very often transactions don't actually transfer. So what that means is some kind of troubleshooting will very often have to take place with big company files. Now, you're going to want to get things started by opening up your QuickBooks Desktop file. And for the purpose of showing you how this is going to work, I've created a sample company file. It's called Bro and Bro Hockey Training. And right now, I'm just trying to show you what the company does. So they're in the business of providing hockey training or coaching to students, and they also sell skates. So they have some kind of inventory. Now, once you finally have migrated the information to QuickBooks Online, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to sanity check your work. You're going to want to make sure that whatever financial information is in QuickBooks Online matches exactly to what type of information you have in QuickBooks Desktop. So your balance sheet in Desktop and your P&L in Desktop are supposed to match to your P&L and your balance sheet in QuickBooks Online. So what you're going to want to do is, first of all, make sure you save. I suggest having a backup of your QuickBooks Desktop file in case something happens, in case you start working on online and it didn't migrate properly and you know you need to go back to desktop. It's always a good idea. But you're gonna want to open up your QuickBooks Online once everything is said and done and compare it to QuickBooks Desktop. You're gonna want to compare your trial balance in QuickBooks Desktop to your QuickBooks Online trial balance. The next step is for you to open up your QBO file, but chances are you don't have a QBO file yet. And you may want to experiment a little bit with QuickBooks Online. So if you go over to Intuit's website, you'd be able to download or rather get access to a 1 month free subscription to any one of the different QuickBooks Online packages that they have. I'm not going to go too into detail with the different packages that you can choose from, but I guess general rule of thumb, if you're not using more sophisticated modules like inventory or project costing, you're going to be good to go with the Essentials package, which at the current moment is at $35 Canadian. I just want to mention that those dollar values are in Canadian and they're monthly. And also, you can actually get a discount. So you may have multiple QuickBooks Online files, so it might not be a good idea to call the 1-800 number, and you can talk to a salesperson. And if you're not actually sure which kind of package you should choose, first of all, ask your accountant. Second of all, you can always contact QBO sales and they can help you. So you can go ahead and select which package you're interested in or sign up for the biggest package just for 1 month. Fill out the information, your email, your phone number, and you'll receive an email saying that basically your account has been activated. In the interest of moving things along and saving time, I've taken a screenshot of where you'll have to click to actually migrate the file from QuickBooks Desktop. So you'll click Company and export company file to QuickBooks Online. And I hope it's obvious enough. You just need to click Get Started, and that'll take you to a screen which may take some time, and you'll eventually be prompted to an area where you'll have to insert your QuickBooks Online email and password, which you've already created in the previous steps. Now in the next step, you'll open up your QuickBooks Online like I've done. At this point, the information should have transferred into QuickBooks Online, either fully or partially. So that's your objective now. Your objective now is to open up your reports and compare your QuickBooks Desktop file to your QuickBooks Online file. Now keep in mind I have these funny dates of 2024, but that doesn't really matter. I'm pulling up a trial balance. I've pulled up my trial balance in QuickBooks Online, and I want to get a split screen going here so I can easily look at the two files and compare. And literally take your time doing this step because it's very important. You'll want to make sure that each individual account is the same. Another way you could be doing this, I mean, I'm just speeding things up here. Another way you can do this is export an Excel version of both reports and line them up in Excel so that visually it's easier, or get some kind of formula going so you can subtract, say, your desktop amount from your online amount and see if that gives you 0. But I'm just doing this for the purpose of showing you what the premise of this is, what the thought process is just making sure that they're the same. So I am happy with the trial balance. I've ascertained that they are the same. And I pulled up my P&L, my income statement in QuickBooks in another tab. So by the way, you can open up multiple tabs in QBO and have multiple reports going at the same time. So to speed things up, I had that opened up and I have it handy, and I'm just comparing. I'm looking, see if they're all the same, see if everything imported, migrated to QBO correctly. Just basically sanity checking everything. I am continuing my check now. I just want to mention that in the past, when I've migrated files and it was not a slam dunk, common place where I saw discrepancies were in the AR and in the AP. So even though everything seems like transferred properly, I just like checking those. I just like seeing that the balances for each one of those individuals or companies, in this case it's individuals, I guess, in the AR match. Same thing with the AP. I mean, I'm going to want to make sure that if a customer owes me money in my AR, that the amounts are accurate. Same thing goes for the AP. In the example we just finished doing, everything worked out beautifully for us. We were able to migrate the file. Everything seemed to match in QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop, but that's very often not the case, especially if you have a very big QuickBooks Desktop file where a business has been using that file for many years, maybe a decade, maybe 15 years, who knows. The likeliness of that information transferring over correctly is very low. So now I'm going to take a look at things we can do if we do notice discrepancies after the migration. And I've listed 3. The first one is find and enter each individual transaction. I wrote it, I'm reading it right now, and it sounds a little bit crazy, because what if there are lots of transactions? And what if they date back to several years ago? That's a very bad option. Now, if you identify that 2 GLs were incorrect and it was a case of, I don't know, say for instance, a meal and expense amount that went into a travel GL instead, and it just involves, I don't know, either editing a simple transaction, then fine. But if it's multiple transactions, it's not going to be feasible for you. So the next option is make adjusting post-migration journal entry. This is what I would suggest doing, actually, because what you can do is, chances are when you do the migration, 90%, maybe even more, of the information transferred correctly. So it's nice because you can still use QuickBooks Online as an accounting system where you can go back and look at things. It's just that maybe a couple of GLs were off. So what you can do is just identify which GLs are off, that are missing amounts or transactions, and make an adjusting journal entry such that you have a trial balance in QuickBooks that is exactly the same as your trial balance in QuickBooks Online. Now, this is a little bit complicated. This is definitely something that someone who doesn't have a background in accounting should be doing. And also you got to understand that chances are your AP and your AR are going to be affected. If this is the case, what I suggest you do is you replicate whatever trial balance you have in Desktop to QuickBooks Online by doing a journal entry so that they match exactly 100%. And then after you do a series of basically transactions, you literally re-enter all of the AR, for instance, on the date of migration, but you use a special GL. So you enter each AR. However, what you're going to be selecting is a debit and a credit that is both an AR. So essentially, it's going to be a wash. And therefore, the net effect of your entry is 0. And you just need to do this for the purpose of having your AR summary and listing being accurate. And by the same token, works the same way with AP. So you'll have a debit and credit that is an AP for each bill that's open. And all of the financial information is going to be correct. Now, the third option is essentially not to do the migration, not to bother with it, and just start off your company from scratch by having an opening journal entry, which basically is going to replicate all of the information that is on your QuickBooks Desktop trial balance. But you got to keep in mind that similar to step number 2, you need to do some maneuvering or some extra data entry with regards to the AP and AR so that you can have your AP and AR reports and open invoices and bills correct. Like I've been saying earlier, QuickBooks Online isn't for everyone. You may want to stick with your QuickBooks Desktop file, especially if you're the type of business who's in manufacturing. QuickBooks Desktop is able to handle inventory a lot better than QuickBooks Online. So if you're especially type of business who is a manufacturing business that's dealing with raw materials who then get converted into work in processes and multiple work in processes, might want to stick to desktop. Another reason why QuickBooks Desktop might work for you better is because you don't have a reliable internet connection. And that goes without saying. You can't use QuickBooks Online if you don't have access to the internet. And also, if you're always using QuickBooks Online strictly at the office, maybe you don't really need QuickBooks Online. Also, if you're a company that, or rather, if you're a business owner with multiple companies and some of these companies only have a couple of transactions every month, like say 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 transactions a month, and you require bookkeeping to be done for these companies, well, you got to realize that your QuickBooks Online is going to run you up a good amount of monthly fees, because each one of those QuickBooks is going to cost you as a separate subscription. Whereas the desktop, you can actually create multiple QuickBooks files. That's the end of our video. Hopefully you found it useful, and if you did, please make sure to like and subscribe.